draw near and give attention. You may be seated. Remain standing. This is the trial of Mrs. Ellen Allen for the murder of Mrs. Laura Graham. Counsel may now begin with their opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, this courtroom is crowded. I haven't seen it this crowded during this term. And I see in the audience there are many women among you, some of whom may have no doubt known Mrs. Allen. Others who are here out of the motives of curiosity, which it does indeed seem to attract the sex to the trial of any celebrated case. I digress. Those of you who knew Mrs. Allen know that while she may be a little hysterical, know that she was not and never has been insane. We will demonstrate that she knew perfectly well what she was doing the night she shot Mrs. Graham, leaving the deceased's poor children motherless.
Well, if my client, Mrs. Allen, is guilty of something, it is only that she loves her husband with all her heart. The defense will show that Mr. Allen's infidelity so weighed on my client's mind, already weakened by a predisposition to insanity, that she finally gave way and was in a state of complete mental incompetence when she carried out the fatal shooting of the adulteress who threatened all that she held dear.
My husband grew more and more distant. I tried to keep a good home, but he took his own room, coming and going as he pleased, hardly saying a word. And then I felt the letters.
Oh, there, Mrs. Allen. What letters?
Love letters. Sometimes 2 a week. He'd leave them in plain sight. Despite me, I suppose. I got on the train and went to go see that home wrecker in Newcastle. I read those letters to her husband, and you know what he said to me? He said, "What do you want me to do about it, lady?"
And this was a week before you shot Mrs. Graham, was it not?
I don't remember.
Don't remember. Well, you were pretty upset, right? So it'd be safe to say that you were angry. Is that right?
I don't recall.
Do not recall. Well, do you recall, Mrs. Allen, taking your husband's pistol up to Mrs. Graham's room on the evening of August 12th, knocking on her door, and when she answered it, mercilessly shooting her? Blam! Blam! Blam!
Objection! Counsel is leading the witness.
Oh, maybe just a wee bit. I'll rephrase. Do you recall anything of any sort or any kind involving Mrs. Graham previous to the aforementioned visit to her in Newcastle?
It's all so hazy. I awoke. It was mid-September, and I was in Providence Hospital.
Next witness, please. Mrs. Ballard, will you kindly tell this jury how you came to know Mr. Allen?
Well, I'm the housekeep at the Pleasant Rooming House, and Mr. Allen, he came and rented a room for me, he did, and he said his family was from out of town, and that they may come in, and if they want to show up, to let them into their room. So his wife, she came in, and I let her into the room. I did.
Very good. Will you please take a look at this photograph, Mrs. Ballard? Is this the woman that you suppose to be Mr. Allen's wife?
Yes, sir, that's the wife.
Aha! Now, Mrs. Haig, proprietor of the Western Hotel, is this the woman you saw with Mr. Allen?
Yes, that is she.
And Mrs. Pearson, chambermaid at the Coronado Hotel. Is this the woman you mentioned to us in your testimony?
Yes, sir. She was with him. Come to think of it, they hardly left me any tip at all.
Tell the court, if you will, Police Officer Springle, how you knew Mrs. Allen.
Well, I saw Mrs. Allen on the street 2 weeks before the shooting, and she told me about her husband's affair with Miss Graham, and of her intention to confront Mrs. Graham's husband with evidence of the affair.
And what did you make of her emotional or mental condition at the time?
That time on the street?
Yes.
Well, she was upset, excited, but definitely not insane.
And how about the evening after the murder?
Oh, after the murder? Definitely, completely, violently insane.
And Dr. Lowry, you were the chief medical expert at the county jail who saw Mrs. Allen.
Well, that is correct. I am, in fact, an expert in medical diseases. I gave Miss Allen a thorough examination the night after the shooting.
And what was your diagnosis, doctor?
Well, at the time, she appeared to me to be in a semi-comatose condition. I strongly shook her into a semblance of consciousness, but she could not even answer the simplest of questions. She could scarcely produce her own name. In my professional opinion, Mrs. Allen suffered from what I would call extreme hysteria.
And how could you be sure, doctor?
Well, I gave a very thorough examination. In fact, I administered the scientific pin test.
Pin test?
Yes, the pin test. I repeatedly pricked the patient's skin with not less than 50 pins, but she did not feel a single prick.
And you did not think her insane?
Well, insanity is defined as a morbid condition of the mind, as opposed to hysteria, which is a morbid condition of the nervous system.
Well, the mind, the brain, the nervous system, could one not be so closely related to the other that it could be a matter of taste as to whether or not the brain or the nervous system were at fault?
Potato? Potato? I see your point. Perhaps one doctor's hysteria could very well be another doctor's insanity.
Yes! No further questions, Your Honor.
The jury must now deliberate and come to a unanimous verdict.
Your Honor, the jury is demanding to be taken to dinner.
Yeah, I can't expect us to do these decisions on an empty stomach, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, by a show of hands, how many of you would think that Mrs. Ellen Allen is guilty of murder?
If she's guilty, put him up.
And how about who would think she is not guilty by reason of insanity?
Okay. So it appears tonight our jury here is split. But if you'll remember, we needed to have a unanimous decision in 1904. So let's come back and finish up our trial and see where we ended up.
Did you say guilty?
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We find the defendant, Miss Allen. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Not guilty.
Ah!